moments, merely moments now until your feeble flesh bends to my will, and it will, so rest your weary head.
Welcome to this special Passover episode of Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. The story of Moses and the Exodus is no stranger to film. Whether it's the Ten Commandments, the Prince of Egypt, Exodus, Gods and Kings, or some other adaptation. The problem for me is that these movies are too safe and too pious. In trying to appeal to mass audiences and trying not to offend religious viewers, they don't really say anything interesting. There is, however, one exception: Seder-Masochism, an uninhibited, one-of-a-kind animated critique of the well-known Passover tale. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomrin is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Cool Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios.
Our special guest today is Nina Paley, a cartoonist, animator, and free culture advocate. She's best known for her 2008 animated feature film, Sita Sings the Blues, based on the Ramayana, and her 2018 animated feature, Seder-Masochism, a jukebox musical recounting the Exodus, the eradication of goddess worship, and the rise of patriarchy. Nina, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Hello, thanks for inviting me.
In your 2015 TEDx presentation, which I was just rewatching, you described copyright as a sort of brain damage that stifles the collective mind of culture and interrupts the natural flow of transmission, remixing, and innovation. How is this copyright abolitionist philosophy expressed in your work?
Well, in Seder-Masochism, it's expressed in me using any music that I wanted. I was not going to worry about that. So much censorship happens inside the artist's mind before a work ever gets expressed in the first place. So I decided I was not going to cooperate in this, that if it was going to be censored, it would have to be censored externally, which YouTube has done. I have not posted it on YouTube, but YouTube does not recognize fair use, the doctrine of fair use, which all of the music uses in Seder-Masochism are in fact fair use, but that doesn't matter. YouTube just has a little robot, and I would need big legal resources to challenge YouTube, which I don't have. But I do believe if I challenged YouTube, I would win. But still, little artists, no money, doesn't get to do that.
Could you explain the concept of fair use? And I know that if you were to pay the rights for all the music in that film, it would probably cost $1 billion or something like that.
I don't know if it'll cost $1 billion, but yeah, there's very clear exceptions to standard copyright protocol for transformative uses. Parody is included, also educational uses, also commentary. There's like a set, and there's some requirements it has to fulfill. One of them is that the use actually is transformative, and another is that it does not threaten the income of the so-called copyright owner from those works. And fair use is like use it or lose it, and we've been losing it because no one's using it, because the movie industry is somewhat conservative, extremely conservative and cowardly, and people just don't assert it. But I'm not the movie industry. I'm just an artist. I'm independent. I don't have to answer to investors or anyone. So when I set out to make Seder-Masochism, that was part of it. As I was, and one of the first songs that I wanted to use, my immediate reaction was, oh, I can't use that. And it was hard for me to overcome that, but I did use it. It was Go Down Moses.
Even that classic you can't use. Amazing.
Well, you can use anything if you just use it. I was asked at a screening, how were you able to use this music? And I said, well, I bought DVDs of the music and I put them in my DVD drive and I copied them onto my hard drive and then I put them in my editor.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
Well, the designs and animation you created for Seder-Masochism are striking and hard to forget. I personally can't see the Exodus the same way after watching the movie. I don't want to call it propaganda art, but there's a clear and compelling anti-normative, provocative message that comes through, whether it's the brutal slaughtering of ancient goddesses or the disconcerting image of Jesus at the Last Supper speaking with the voice of what sounds like an old Reform rabbi from an instructional Passover record.
Many long years ago on this night, our ancestors heard the call of freedom, and tonight that call rings out once more, commanding us to champion the cause of the oppressed peoples throughout the world.
I imagine only an atheist Jew with a secular upbringing would come up with this stuff. Why did you decide to make Seder-Masochism?
Well, I'm an atheist Jew with a secular upbringing.
Yeah.
So apparently it had to happen. So one reason I made Seder-Masochism was that after my first film, Sita Sings the Blues, came out, some Hindu fundamentalist nationalists called my collaborators on that film self-hating Hindus. And there were a lot of, there was a strain of criticism of the film and of me for cultural appropriation, because as what they assumed was a white Christian woman working with the Ramayana, that was not okay. I was not the correct ethnicity for that. And so I thought, like, oh, really? Well, you want me to work with supposedly my cultural heritage as determined by my genetic makeup? Okay. I don't think you're going to be any happier with that, but I'll do that. And so, yeah, it was going to be Passover because that's the one big holiday that I was raised observing. But another reason I made Seder-Masochism was because my father was dying as I got the idea for it. And I did want to do something about my father, some attempt to connect with my father somehow. And I am Jewish. Well, both of my parents are ethnically Jewish, but my father was from a religious family. And even though he was a hardcore atheist himself, it was very important that we had some sort of connection to Jewish identity. So that came more from him. My mom's family was a lot more assimilated and relaxed about Judaism.
Yeah, I think there is that beautiful juxtaposition in the film between like the harsh takedown of tradition and then some sprinkles of tradition, which I don't know, it makes for a indefinable experience in some ways.
Yeah, well, that's being a secular Jewish American is a somewhat indefinable experience. I mean, it's been a trip, especially lately. Like, I really did not think much about being Jewish. It was just sort of this quirky fact about me. I did not experience anti-Semitism growing up. I experienced little to no anti-Semitism in my life. And just look at the world now. This is just bizarre. So, yeah, like I didn't even bother. Well, using my Jew card is what I called it. I had literally made a Jew card when I started making Seder-Masochism. It's like, I can make this movie, which was, it's been so many things have changed in the last 10 years or 15 years.
You have some delightful scenes in the film where you, depicted as a lamb, are chatting with your bearded God-in-the-sky father, who was a mathematics professor. The audio was taken from interviews you recorded with your father.
I know firsthand what it's like to do something that your family doesn't like.
Oh yeah, like what?
Like dropping out of college.
Well, it was a stupidity on your part. It has nothing to do with religion.
What inspired you to put those in the movie?
When I started making the movie, I did a lot of live recordings of people's Seders. And I used none of those recordings, but I also recorded my father. Those recordings are, well, it's just one recording, really. He was at a hospital a few months before he died. We thought he was dying that time, but he wasn't. But I really wanted to get an interview with him. So yeah, I was getting interviews, and that one I included, but the scenes with him were the last scenes that I made in producing the films. I started with the musical numbers, and the audio I did with my dad, I just did not want to play for several years. I just felt very ambivalent about it. And I think it was 5 years after his death that I returned to them because I had to finish the film. And, I knew I wanted that stuff in, but it was just hard for me to listen to the whole thing. And yeah, I finished the film.
Well, that's part of the sweetness of the film. I think the other part is that kind of harsh edge. And whenever war flares up in the Middle East, as it often does, I have a habit of sending around the scene from the movie set to the triumphalist song, "This Land Is Mine," from the movie Exodus, sung by Andy Williams. And the animation shows the never-ending back-and-forth conflict in that land, beginning with early man through the Canaanites, Egyptians, Assyrians, Israelites, Babylonians, Greeks, Maccabees, and others, to the Crusaders, Turks, Arabs, British, Palestinians, Israelis, and others, culminating in the angel of death, who you describe on your website as the real hero of the Old Testament. And right now, too, the message isn't exactly ambiguous, but what did you hope viewers would take away from this jarring, darkly humorous portrayal of perpetual brutality?
Yeah, people sometimes ask me what I want viewers to take away, and it's not like I really know. I think I make art to be less alone myself. If other people feel less alone witnessing this world when they see my art, then perhaps I want them to just take away some comfort or camaraderie or the knowledge that you are not alone.
Yeah, it seems that people maybe aren't as open about talking about cyclical violence because that's really what we're dealing with. And the fact that you portrayed artistically in a very evocative and, strident kind of way, I think it does articulate that sense of anxiety and hopelessness that people aren't comfortable maybe saying themselves.
Yeah, I guess that's the one thing that I'm skeptical of with the Middle East situation, the land of Canaan situation, is just when people think that they have an answer and that everybody should go along with this answer. If everybody would just do the thing, we'd all be great. And it's like, no, people are not going to do the thing. And the reason they're not going to do the thing is because of a couple thousand years of stuff. And yeah, it's difficult to live in a world with an unsolvable problem.
Another great scene in the movie has ancient Near Eastern goddess figurines singing and dancing to the Pointer Sisters' "You Gotta Believe." They taunt Moses with the lyrics, "Why not believe in me?" In the film, you make the case that the God of Moses is, by no accident, male. Can you elaborate?
I knew I was making a film about the Passover story, which was Exodus, but I didn't know how I was going to find meaning that was resonant with me. I didn't know how I was going to really get into it. What you're supposed to do with the Exodus story is Moses is the hero. And you make a hero story like all those other films you mentioned, the Ten Commandments and Prince of Egypt. For feminists, for women are supposed to relate to the story through Miriam, Moses' sister, which they did a little bit in Prince of Egypt. Miriam is hardly mentioned at all in the text. She's sort of an invention. Well, her character is sort of made up by well-meaning feminist-leaning liberal Jews who want to make the story seem more feminist or inclusive of women than it is. It really is not. So I didn't want to modify the story to be something that it wasn't. Have you read the text? I read the version in my King James Gideon Bible. But
well, I don't know if I should admit this, but I do have a PhD in Hebrew Bible.
wow. So you read it in Hebrew?
Yeah, it's not any better.
Yeah. So, this is pretty harsh on women and very male-oriented, very patriarchal. I mean, Moses was a patriarch. It's a patriarchal religion. So, yeah, I was really not seeing Moses as a hero. And I wasn't really seeing Aaron as a hero. In fact, that Levite family seemed pretty corrupt, especially after Aaron did that whole golden calf thing and everybody got killed except Aaron, and Aaron got to be made a priest and all of Aaron's descendants got to be priests forever. It was like, what? He enabled that golden calf. He did that. So the question was, how am I going to relate to this without Moses being the hero? And I was just, I read lots of commentaries and interpretations and books about Exodus. And the one that I liked the most was called When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. And it's a fallible book, but I did like her basic thesis, which was that the Hebrew religion emerged in a world where goddesses were worshipped. And that's the idols that they were talking about. And that's the neighbors' religions that they were talking about. And that's what got eliminated when Hebrew monotheism became dominant. You can't worship goddesses when, thou shalt have only one God and have no other gods before me. And, goddess worship, that was the practice there. That was the land. That was what people did. I liked that and I pursued it. But in order for me to tell that story, I had to sort of resurrect the goddess. And we can't really do that in modern times because we're cut off from goddess religions as they were historically practiced. People have kind of reinvented them, but that's really, reinventing and reimagining them isn't the same as having a tradition that's handed down. We are cut off from that. Humanity is cut off from that part of our legacy. But I had to make it up, so I did. So I have these different representations of the goddess, and just as many as I could find. And those animated goddess figurines, the statues, those were all images that I was looking at when I was trying to design a character of the goddess. And my plan was to redraw all of them, but I was using a new animation software for me. And after a while, I realized, hey, I don't have to redraw these. I can just use the reference material. And that's how those guys got animated, or gals, I should say. That's how those gals got animated.
You're reminding me of something as well. The founder of Humanistic Judaism, Rabbi Sherwin Wein, he would ask rhetorically, what's so great about monotheism anyway? There's this thing in Western culture where we believe that monotheism is somehow an advantage or some better version of theology. And what you're saying is one reason, I think, why maybe that isn't so, right? What do we lose when we decide upon one deity, one male deity? And your film very much captures what is lost and violently shows how it was lost and so forth. It's quite provocative.
Well, thanks. And my first feature, my only other feature, was about the Ramayana, which is a Hindu story set in the Hindu pantheon with, lots of different gods and goddesses and avatars thereof. And I had no problem relating to that story. That story knocked me up inside the head, whereas Old Testament really did not do that at all.
Your work and some of your views have stirred controversy over the years. Do you set out to be provocative, or are you simply being true to yourself? In other words, do you think that your art, or maybe art in general, has added cultural value if it is controversial?
I do not set out to be controversial. I know that's hard to believe, but I really, truly do not. I'm just trying to tell the truth because I don't like being alone. You know, like, we're all witnesses of this world, and I witness things, and I need to talk to other people about the things that I witness. And occasionally, we're not allowed to do that. Occasionally, we're in grave danger if we do that. But I need to do it. I really don't like provoking people. I really don't. But I can't be alone. I can't be the only person that sees what I see. And so I talk about it. And that is very upsetting, especially if you do it 6 or 8 or 10 years before the rest of the world realizes that they need to talk about it too.
Yeah, I get that sense that you're just sort of presenting the world as you see it in your art. And there's certainly a personal reason for doing that. And like you said, kind of resonating with others who may feel the same way, and maybe giving them a voice even, or making them see things more clearly, and helping them to articulate perhaps their views on these issues as well.
If you're seeing stuff that's like clear as day right in front of your face and nobody else around you sees it, you feel really crazy and really alone. And going through this world alone is really terrifying and difficult. And I can shut up, but the depression and like the loneliness and the depression that causes is actually worse than what happens when other people are provoked. But no, I don't set out to provoke people. I don't know why I am like this, or I don't know. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy provoking people.
In your view, what are the chances of patriarchy ever going away?
0. Patriarchy will never go away. So I'm not like smash the patriarchy. We can't smash the patriarchy. We can do our best in it. So this has been a tough decade for feminists, because feminists wanted to smash the patriarchy, but you can't really smash physical, biological differences between men and women. And there has been this reckoning, and a lot of women have had to acknowledge what we never wanted to, which is that men on the whole are stronger and bigger than women on the whole. And when that's the situation, there's an inherent inequality between the sexes, an inherent inequality of strength. And on the most basic level, if you have a class of people that's stronger and in most cases more violent than the other class of people, the stronger and more violent ones are gonna dominate the weaker and less violent ones. That's just gonna happen. And as humanists, we can say like, oh, okay, well, if let's try to make things as equal as possible. Let's try to balance this out. Let's try to give some protections to the weaker ones so that they're not constantly intimidated or dominated by the stronger ones. You can try to do that, but the reality is there's those differences.
I sort of feel that way too when we're talking about economics and the desire for sort of a compassionate capitalism, because capitalism isn't going away either, as far as I know. And, it doesn't have a soul, and it doesn't have the best interests of everyone in mind. So the idea of creating a compassionate capitalism, is there a possibility of a compassionate patriarchy, or is that also kind of a dream too far?
I don't know. I mean, when it comes to capitalism, I think of this. I think it's a line in the New Testament, the poor will always be with us. Didn't they figure that out a long time ago? Like, you can't have everyone in the same class. Human beings are hierarchical, and they sort themselves into upper and lower and top and bottom. That's what they do. And we do that because that's what we do. We're animals, and animals have some social animals have just an innate sense of that, of the pecking order. So those who want to eliminate capitalism, they want to do it because it's so unfair. These hierarchies are so unfair. It's not right that there are poor and rich, and that some people get the short end of the stick. But I think that that's a part of group nature, human group nature. Now we can make it less extreme. We do make it less extreme, right? We have some regulations, some social policies that take the edge off of it. And it would be good to have more of those, but we can't eliminate hierarchy. Like, even if you eliminate something that's called capitalism, you're still going to have probably even more grotesque, even more covert hierarchies that are even harder to deal with.
Yeah, as you're alluding to, we are primates. I think we forget that. And primate societies tend to be hierarchical and unfair. And what can you do?
I mean, yeah, but, we should do our best, right? We should try to be decent human beings and have principles and think about our principles and then apply our principles and reevaluate our principles if they're not working. We should do all that.
Well, on that positive note, it's been great talking to you, Nina.
And it's been great talking to you.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.